Welcome to Check-In with Jason Lauritsen, where we explore how to create human, connected workplaces that employees love and that fuel organizational success. Today, again, like last week, you are stuck with just me. This is a solo episode. And like last week, I'm going to share today some tips and some advice for how you can better connect with your people to create a more human experience for your team or for your organization. Last week, I talked about check-ins, and specifically I shared 5 great check-in questions for leaders. And today we're going to talk about active listening. And these two fit together because as I shared last week in the episode, if you haven't heard it, you should go back and check it out. There are 4 steps to an effective check-in. First step is ask a great question. That's what we talked about in last week's episode. The second is ask the follow-up question. We also talked about that. Step 3 is to really listen. That's what we're going to do in today's episode. And if you pair those 3 together, then you are in a position to do step 4 effectively, which is to offer support and encouragement when you check in with your people or with anyone else in your life. And so today I thought what we do is I'm going to share 4 tips for how you can be a better listener. And specifically, these are 4 tips to help you be an active listener when you are sitting down to have a conversation that really matters. And these tips are really helpful at work. They're really helpful as a manager and leader at work, but these are tips that will help you be a better listener no matter where you are, no matter who you're with, because we know listening is incredibly powerful. I mean, when we try to connect or desire to connect with someone, feeling heard is perhaps the most important thing that draws us in, right? That makes us feel connected. And the skill or the ability that enables us to do that for others, to connect with others, is the ability to listen. Now, I don't know if you're like me. I have always, I guess, let's call it for at least my adult life, I have thought of myself, or at least consider myself to be at least a decent listener. I thought I was an okay listener. And I got a wake-up call about how difficult it is to be a great listener in my 20s. And I think this was probably in my mid-20s. I had been in sales, where in sales, obviously, part of your effectiveness is based on your ability to listen. I had worked on the phones, in call centers. I had worked in phone sales. And listening is something you have to do well if you're going to succeed there. And so I thought I was a pretty decent listener. And I don't know what was going on at the time in my 20s. Like, if you know me very well, you'll know that I've over the course of my lifetime, I've been kind of obsessed and kind of a weirdo about self-development and particularly self-awareness. And one of the things I had done is I actually just informally had conducted my own kind of 360 assessment, if you will, of my friends, of friends and acquaintances and colleagues and people that I was spending a lot of time with at the time. I sent them some questions and I asked them to respond to me, to give me some feedback, to talk to me about what I do well and talk to me about ways that I could be better, I could be a better friend. And I got a lot of great feedback, which was, delightful. And I think because you're asking directly, they were primed to sort of say nice things. Probably felt obligated to do so. I don't know if all those were true, but I believed them anyways. But the thing that I remember most distinctly about that time is I remember a couple of people saying that sometimes I didn't listen very well, that they didn't feel like I listened to them very well. And that hurt. Right, that was a little bit heartbreaking to me because I cared a lot and I thought I was listening, but clearly I wasn't. And so that was sort of the beginning of me getting really serious about learning to be a better listener. And I wish I could tell you that I'm a great listener all the time, but that would be a lie. I think anybody that knows me would tell you that there are times when I probably don't listen as well as I should. Probably the people that live in my house with me are the people that would tell you that the most. But what I can tell you is that I care deeply about it, and I have been, on a quest to sort of learn the skills that help you be a better listener over the last 25 years now, I guess. So half of my life, if you will. And what I'm going to share with you today, I mean, I don't have time to share all of these things with you. I have done webinars and training in the past on active listening, and that takes a lot longer than how much time we're going to spend here together today. But what I do want to share with you are 4 tips, kind of the 4 things that I find have been most important, or that I still today are the things that I try to practice to help me listen better. And these are extra important when you are in a high stakes kind of conversation, when you're trying to have a check-in conversation that matters with someone on your team, or you're sitting down with a friend to really check in and connect. These are tips that I have found to be really helpful. So here we go. 4 tips for being a better listener. Number 1 is to remove distractions. Now, this might seem obvious, might seem almost overly simple, but I can tell you this is something that at least I know that I have to be really conscious of. I mean, how many times do you think about you're sitting down to have a meeting with someone, and maybe they have a laptop open in front of them that has all kinds of distractions popping up, or their phone is sitting on the table, face up, right next to them, and every time something beeps or something, the screen flashes on, they look at their phone, they look at their phone, they look at their phone, right? Does that make you feel like you're the most important thing to them, that they're really paying attention, that you have their full attention, that they're really listening? Not to me, it doesn't. Not to me, it doesn't. And so when we think about, we want to really be present, we want to actively listen, we want to give people the gift of our full attention, one of the things we must do is be proactive about removing distraction. So that can look like, let's go back to the phone example or technology, is like get as many distractions turned off or out of your line of sight as possible. So if you're meeting in person, put your phone on Do Not Disturb and put it in your pocket, right? Just completely remove the potential distraction, or the potential for those things to happen, to pop up out of the corner of your eye. If you are meeting virtually, turn off, shut down your email, turn off your notifications or silence your notifications. When you are in Zoom meetings, right, that's the thing that gets you've got stuff happening kind of all over the place and around this conversation you're having. Turn it off. Just be proactive. Don't trust yourself not to want to peek when that notification pops up. I have to remember to turn Slack off, right? Because you don't want those Slack notifications dinging in while you're trying to have a conversation with someone. Because even if you don't read them, just that noise and then your eyes averting for a second sort of breaks the commitment to listening that you are making to that person. And so the other thing on this that I found to be really helpful is that if you have the luxury of meeting with your people in person, so the people you manage or lead, and you're meeting in person for a meeting, what I found when I wanted to have really quality conversations, I stopped having one-on-ones in my office. I never wanted to have one-on-ones from behind my desk, because when you're behind your desk, there's a phone and there's a screen and there's a laptop and there's a phone. And even if you turn all that off, it still feels there's so much there that can be a distraction, and the employee knows that there's all kinds of stuff that could be a distraction. And so get out from behind your desk, go sit around a small table and have coffee, or go sit someplace where you can get away from the distractions that are your office. Being in your office means other people might pop in or knock on the door as well, right? So getting to a different location can help. So remove distractions, right? Get away from the phone, get away from the screen. If in your personal life, somebody you live with wants to have a conversation with you, turn off the TV, right? Turn your phone off, shut distractions down. So you got it? I feel like I'm maybe beating a dead horse, but this is so important. It's something that we have so many ways to distract ourselves. It's important to shut it down. So that's number 1. Number 2 is when you are listening, is to notice the whole person. And The way that I remember this, and I would encourage you to remember this, maybe you write this down or try to remember to write this down later if you're listening, is that you hear with your ears, but you listen with your eyes. You hear with your ears, but you listen with your eyes. How many times have you had a conversation with someone who is looking at their phone while you're talking to them? And you'll say, "Are you listening to me?" And they're like, yep, I'm listening. But you know they're not fully committed to listening, right? You know there's some other distraction. At best, you're getting half of their attention. And so we listen with our eyes, which means we need to be really paying attention. We can hear what people are saying, but so much communication between humans happens non-verbally. It's our facial expressions. It's sort of a movement in our body. It's a wince, or it's your eyes divert, right? All kinds of things happen that give us little signals about, what the full sort of robust message was that was just conveyed to us when someone said something. I mean, you've certainly had those experiences. I know where you'll ask somebody like, "So how are you feeling about this?" Or how do you feel about going? How do you feel about going here for lunch? And somebody will be like, that's okay. And you're like, "Wait a minute, that's okay. It doesn't sound like you're a fan of this place, right? Tell me what's going on." Or, you say, "Hey, I'm going to pair you up with Bob on this project," and you can see a look come across their face. Right? And it's like, they didn't even say anything. And you wouldn't have heard anything with your ears, right? Because they didn't say anything. But if you're really listening, you see it. You notice that communication. You notice that happen. And the key is then to, when you notice it, ask the follow-up question, right? Mention it. Like, "Hey, when I said that you're being paired up with Bob, I noticed your face changed. What's that about? Like, talk to me, right? Before we go down this road, talk to me. Tell me what's happening." Or, like I said earlier, like, "Are you not a fan of that restaurant? Because I don't really care where we eat. Like, do you have something you prefer?" And then they recommend something else. Either way, really like looking at people, making eye contact so that you're getting the full message, the full information they're offering up and sharing with you. And when you think about this, I go back to when I talk about the 4 steps of the check-in. I think this is sometimes where we tend to drop the ball a little bit, because we're doing the check-in. And even if you're doing it well and you ask a great question, you ask the follow-up, if you aren't really paying attention, right? When you get to that great conversation, when they start to share with you what's really going on, there's going to be a whole bunch of information coming your way through their nonverbals, and you need to be dialed in so that you can receive all of that. Otherwise, you miss a lot of the value. So that was number 2. Notice the whole person. Number 3 is a very tactical solution. And it's one that I use frequently, because sometimes you pair up the fact that sometimes I'm not always the best listener, but I also have a very low patience. And if you're like me and you lose your patience or you get distracted easily, it's hard to stay dialed in. And so this suggestion is to take notes. Take notes. So just carry with you and you can do this different ways. I carry either a notebook, or recently I moved to a remarkable tablet that's designed specifically for just writing notes. It's basically a virtual notebook to take notes on. I like handwriting notes for a couple of reasons. I find I can handwrite things and continue to listen at the same time. Like, it doesn't, I guess probably because of training from grade school and from college, having to do that a lot, I'm able to do that. So I like to handwrite notes. The other thing for me in handwritten notes is that if I'm writing things down, for some reason that helps it stick better in my memory. And so that's really practical for me. But even if that's not the case for you, I find that taking notes helps me stay connected. If I am committed to taking notes, so maybe you're talking And maybe like you're telling me about something or you're going on about something that I am not super engaged in or interested in, or I'm having trouble staying engaged for whatever reason. If I don't do something actively to stay with you, I'm going to drift. My attention's going to drift. I'm going to daydream. I'm going to get distracted somehow. By taking notes, it's an active commitment to staying in that conversation, making sure I can't write notes without listening and hearing what you're saying. And so I handwrite. Now, if you're going to use your phone, right? If you're going to use a phone, just say, when you do that, if you're going to pick up your phone, just say, hey, I'm going to turn on my phone, but I'm going to use it to take some notes. I'm just going to type notes in. Just wanted you to know I'm not sending a text or anything. I'm just typing some notes. Make sure they know that so it doesn't come off like they think you're all of a sudden you started sending an email in the midst of them talking. And so take notes. Really great way to supplement and sort of commit to active listening. And then the fourth tip is to ask clarifying questions. I see this happen all the time in conversations and meetings where someone will say something and either you are the one, you don't know exactly what they meant or it's sort of surprising. But rather than chase it down, maybe you're not sure what to say, you're not sure what they meant, or maybe it's one of those things that could be taken a lot of different ways. Maybe you could take it as rude or insulting or short, or on the other side, you could take it as dismissive or whatever it is. It's something that might trigger you. Or maybe it's just confusing, but something gets said, you're not sure what to do, and so you just kind of let it go. Right? So we're going to miss whatever that meaning was or whatever that opportunity was. We're going to part ways, and then that leaves a chasm available for misunderstanding or a disconnection or sort of future problems. And so the easiest technique that I have found is, I'm saying ask clarifying questions might be like, hey, very simply, you might say, hey, can you explain that a bit more? Not sure I understand, right? So that's one level of it. My favorite go-to thing is a phrase that I have found is useful in lots of situations is just, tell me more about that. So when they say something and you're not sure how to take it or say, hey, could you say more about that? Or could you, fill in the details a little bit? I'm not sure that I fully understand. Or, hey, what did you mean when you said X, right? Is another really good prompt. Another good clarifying question. So before we jump to any conclusions, before we make any assumptions about what's being said, we're going to first try to understand better what's being said by asking clarifying questions. And the trick here is just to have some prompts available. So tell me more about that, or hey, I'm not sure I understand. Can you explain a bit more? Or hey, what did you mean when you said whatever? But just practice a few phrases so you have those in your pocket so you can pull those out whenever you have a moment that you aren't sure you are clear about what you just heard, so you can dig in a little bit deeper. So those are the 4 tips I most frequently lean on that are most valuable for me and the ones that I most frequently am teaching and sharing with others, particularly in the context of having great check-ins with your people. These are tips that I would highly recommend every time you check in. Just sort of reset, remind yourself of these 4 things. Remove distractions, notice the whole person, take notes, and ask clarifying questions. If you do that and you're asking a great question, you're going to have some really incredible conversations with your people that will help you build connection. It will help you understand what they need and what they're struggling with so that you can better support them, which will help you produce better performance and a better experience for them. So commit to your listening. It will improve. It makes you a better manager, makes you a better leader, but it also makes you a better friend and partner and parent and community member. So I wish you great luck as you practice listening. I hope something in here will nudge you towards being able to dial in a little more intently with your people, and wish you happy connecting. I'll see you next time.